Rain lashed against the grimy windows of my office, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. A crumpled newspaper lay on my desk, the headline screaming, "Jack's back," and his grown UP. Beneath it, a grainy photo of a gaunt, bearded man, his eyes haunted. Jack. The Jack from the Beanstalk fairy tale. Or so everyone thought. 20 years ago, the world was captivated by the story. A boy, magic beans, a giant, riches. Then, Jack vanished. Poof. Gone. Now, he was back, claiming the giant was real, that he'd escaped, and was coming for revenge. The police dismissed him as a lunatic, but something in his desperate eyes, the raw terror clinging to him, made me, Detective Inspector Leo Maxwell. Take notice, my phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Mrs. Higgins, the old woman who'd supposedly traded Jack the beans. Her voice trembled. "He's here, Inspector." "He's at my door." I grabbed my coat, my gut twisting. This was insane. Giants? Magic beans? But Mrs. Higgins' terror was palpable. I raced to her address, a dilapidated cottage on the edge of town. Police cars already surrounded it, blue lights flashing against the stormy night. Inside, the scene was chaotic. Mrs. Higgins was huddled in a corner, sobbing. A young constable pointed a shaking hand at the ceiling. "Look," I followed his gaze. A massive hole ripped through the roof, jagged edges splintered. It looked like something huge had torn through it. "He took her," Mrs. Higgins wailed. "He took her up there, up." My heart pounded. This was beyond anything I'd ever dealt with. I ordered a helicopter, ignoring the snickers from the other officers. They thought I was mad, chasing a fairy tale. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something truly monstrous was happening. The helicopter hovered above the cottage, the searchlight cutting through the darkness. We followed the trail of destruction, broken branches, crushed fences leading towards a vast, abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of the city. It was a maze of rusting metal and towering silos, a perfect hiding place for whatever we were hunting. The helicopter landed near the main entrance. We moved in cautiously, guns drawn. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the wind whistling through the empty buildings. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp metal and something else. Something acrid, almost earthy. We found him in the largest silo. Not the giant. Jack. He was standing amidst a pile of gold. Mountains of it. More than anyone could ever spend. He was no longer the haunted man from the newspaper photo. He was triumphant. "Welcome, Inspector," he said, a chilling smile spreading across his face. "I see you found my little nest egg. Where's Mrs. Higgins?" I demanded. Jack chuckled. "Don't worry, she's fine. Just resting." He gestured to a dark corner of the silo. I cautiously approached. And then I saw it. Not a giant, but a massive, intricately crafted machine. Gears whirred, pistons pumped. It was a beanstalk. A mechanical beanstalk, reaching up through a hole in the silo roof, disappearing into the storm clouds. "You see, Inspector," Jack explained, his voice dripping with arrogance. The story was true. But it wasn't about magic. It was about technology. My grandfather, the original Jack, was a brilliant inventor. He built this machine, a device capable of extracting rare minerals from the upper atmosphere. He called them sky beans. The giant wasn't a monster, he was a rival inventor, trying to steal his technology. And Mrs. Higgins? I asked, my mind reeling. She's my partner, Jack said. She helped me rebuild the machine. The story was just a cover, a way to keep people away from my grandfather's secret. The police never suspected a fairy tale, he laughed, a cold, hollow sound. Now, Inspector, I'm going to be very rich. And you? You're going to keep my secret. Or you'll disappear, just like my grandfather's rivals. He held up a small, metallic device. This, he said, is a miniature version of the Beanstalk. Powerful enough to rearrange molecules. Think of the possibilities. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just a thief. He was a sociopath. And he had a weapon that could rewrite reality. Then, a voice echoed from the silo entrance. Jack! What have you done? It was Mrs. Higgins. She wasn't huddled and sobbing. She was standing tall, her eyes blazing with fury. You promised we'd share the wealth, she screamed. You said we'd be partners, Jack sneered. Partners? You're just an old woman. You served your purpose, he raised the device. But before he could activate it, Mrs. Higgins lunged forward, grabbing a wrench from the nearby workbench. She swung it with surprising force, hitting Jack squarely in the head. He crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Mrs. Higgins turned to me, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. He was going to betray me, she said, her voice trembling. He was going to take everything. Then, she pointed to the machine. That, she said, needs to be destroyed. It's too dangerous, and that was the twist. The real villain wasn't the giant. It wasn't even Jack. It was the technology itself. And the true hero? The old woman everyone dismissed as a harmless eccentric. She'd been playing Jack all along, waiting for her moment to strike. The fairy tale wasn't about a giant and magic beans. It was about greed, betrayal, and the unexpected strength of an old woman who knew how to use a wrench. Jack and the Beanstalk, Destiny, Chapter 1, A Climb to Nowhere. Jack had always been a man of little fortune and big dreams. When his mother scolded him for trading their last cow for a handful of beans, he felt the sting of failure. But as dawn broke, a towering beanstalk twisted into the heavens, promising a new destiny. With nothing left to lose, Jack climbed atop the beanstalk. Instead of a fairy tale castle, Jack found a sprawling city of glass and steel, cloaked in perpetual twilight. It was a world unlike his own, where shadows moved independently, and the air crackled with a strange energy. He stepped onto the streets, his heart pounding with excitement and fear. Chapter 2, The Giant City. Jack wandered through the maze-like avenues, soon realizing he wasn't alone. Towering figures in dark cloaks walked among the crowds, whispering in hushed tones. One of them, a man with sharp eyes and a jagged scar down his cheek, stopped in front of Jack. You shouldn't be here, the man growled. Jack barely had time to respond before two more figures emerged, seizing him by the arms. They hauled him through a series of back alleys until they reached an enormous marble building. Inside, he was thrown into a dimly lit room where a single lamp flickered above a large, oaken desk. Chapter 3, The Investigator's Gambit. Across the desk sat a woman with piercing blue eyes, her hands steepled as she studied Jack. Jack, son of Eleanor and Richard of the Valley, she said, as if reading from an unseen ledger. You've stepped into a world governed by different rules. Jack was too shocked to speak. You climbed the beanstalk and arrived in New Olympus, the city of the forgotten fates. Your arrival was predicted, yet it was not meant to be. What are you talking about? Jack finally stammered. The woman leaned forward. You are a mistake, Jack. A ripple in the fabric of destiny. And mistakes must be corrected. Chapter 4, The Chase. Jack had no time to react before alarms blared and the walls around him shifted. The room distorted, revealing a vast labyrinth beyond. He bolted, dodging figures emerging from the shadows, their hands grasping for him. He turned a corner and nearly collided with the scar-faced man from earlier. "This way," the man hissed. With no other choice, Jack followed, weaving through the maze of corridors until they burst into the neon-lit streets. "Who are you?" Jack panted. "A friend," the man replied. "The fates want to erase you. But I know the truth. And if you want to survive, you need to run." Chapter 5, A Giant's Debt. Jack followed his mysterious savior through underground tunnels until they reached a hidden chamber. Inside stood an enormous, ironclad figure, a giant. "I knew your father," the giant rumbled. "He was one of us, a seeker of fate. He found a way to rewrite destiny. And for that, he was erased." Jack's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, erased?" The giant handed him a small, golden key. "Your father left this behind. It unlocks the Book of Paths. If you want answers, you must find it before they do." Chapter 6, The Final Truth. Jack followed the clues, dodging shadowy figures, solving riddles hidden within the city, and unlocking the doors to forgotten archives. When he finally reached the Book of Paths, he hesitated before opening it. The pages glowed with golden light, shifting and rearranging as he read. His father's name was there, and below it, his own. A final line sent chills down his spine. "Jack is the giant." The realization crashed over him like a tidal wave. He wasn't the hero of the story. He was the villain. The one fated to fall, and the fates had come to correct their mistake. As the doors burst open and cloaked figures rushed in, Jack made his choice. He grasped the key, knowing it was his only way out. With a whispered word, the world around him shattered, and Jack fell into a destiny rewritten by his own hand. Rain lashed against the windows of my cramped Brooklyn apartment, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I, Jack, wasn't your typical fairy tale hero. No magic beans, no giant to slay. My beanstalk was a Wall Street skyscraper, and the giant I was facing wore a tailored suit and commanded a fortune. His name was Arthur Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries, and he was dead. Detective Mallory, a woman whose cynicism could curdle milk, stood amidst the chaos. Sterling's penthouse was a battlefield, shattered glass, overturned furniture, and a single, gleaming golden goose egg lying incongruously on the Persian rug. "Looks like a robbery gone wrong," Mallory drawled, her gaze sweeping over the scene. I knew better. Sterling had hired me, a private investigator with a less than stellar reputation, just days ago. His request? Find the source of his company's sudden, inexplicable success. He'd muttered about magic, about impossible deals, and about a golden goose. I'd thought he was losing it, a stressed-out billionaire cracking under pressure. Now, staring at that ridiculous egg, I wasn't so sure. My investigation started at Sterling Industries. The place buzzed with nervous energy. Sterling's ambitious but icy VP, Victoria Chase, was the prime suspect in Mallory's eyes. She'd practically inherited the company, and her alibi was flimsy. But something about her felt off. Too composed. Too eager to cooperate. I delved deeper, following the money trail. Sterling's recent deals were indeed miraculous. His company had secured contracts that should have been impossible, outbidding competitors by ludicrous margins. The source? A series of shell corporations, all leading back to rural upstate New York. My beanstalk wasn't just a metaphor. I drove upstate, to a forgotten farming community. There, nestled amongst rolling hills, was a dilapidated farmhouse. It belonged to a reclusive old woman named Martha. She was wary, her eyes darting nervously. But when I showed her a picture of the golden egg, her face crumpled. "He promised he'd leave us alone," she whispered, her voice trembling. He said he wouldn't take any more. Martha told me a story of ancient pacts, of a real golden goose, and of the magic that fueled Sterling's success. She'd given Sterling the goose's eggs, believing he would use the wealth to help their community. Instead, he'd become greedy, demanding more and more. Returning to New York, I confronted Chase. She confessed. She hadn't killed Sterling, but she'd discovered his secret. She'd tried to blackmail him, demanding a larger share of the profits. He'd refused, a violent argument had ensued, and in the chaos, he'd stumbled, hitting his head on the corner of his desk. The golden egg, dislodged during the struggle, was just a macabre souvenir. Malloy arrested Chase, the case seemingly closed. But something still gnawed at me. The timing was too perfect. Chase's blackmail attempt, Sterling's accidental death. It felt staged. I went back to Martha. I asked her about the pact, about the real magic. She explained that the goose laid only one golden egg a year. Sterling had received his first egg months ago. The egg at the crime scene. It was too new. Then it hit me. The golden egg wasn't just a symbol of wealth. It was a symbol of power. And someone else knew its secret. Someone who had orchestrated the entire scenario. I returned to Sterling Industries. This time, I wasn't looking at Chase. I was looking at Sterling's seemingly loyal, longtime assistant, Mr. Finch. He was quiet, unassuming, always in the background. But he knew. He'd been with Sterling from the beginning. He'd seen the goose, understood the power. I confronted him. He didn't deny it. He'd manipulated Chase, pushing her to blackmail Sterling. He'd accidentally bumped Sterling's desk during the argument. He'd even planted the fresh golden egg, knowing it would throw suspicion off him. He wanted the power for himself. Sterling was a fool, Finch hissed, his mild demeanor vanishing. He squandered the magic. I will use it wisely. The twist? The real giant wasn't Sterling. It was the unassuming Finch, hiding in plain sight, manipulating everyone like puppets on a string. And the real magic wasn't just in the golden egg. It was in the cunning of a man who knew how to exploit greed and ambition. My Jack and the Beanstalk had a darker, more sinister ending than any fairy tale. The giant had won, and I, the supposed hero, was left with the chilling realization that sometimes, the greatest monsters wear ordinary suits and blend into the background. The rain hammered against the grimy windows of Jack's cramped apartment, mirroring the relentless pounding of worry in his chest. Another eviction notice crumpled in his trembling hand. His mother's cough echoed through the thin walls, a constant reminder of their desperate situation. This wasn't some quaint English story for listening practice. This was his life, a harsh struggle story playing out in real time. He wasn't some character in an audiobook. He was Jack, a poor boy facing a mountain of debt and a mother's failing health. He needed a miracle, and fast. He remembered the old stories his mother used to tell him, the ones she'd read aloud for his English listening practice. Jack and the Beanstalk, she'd say, her voice warm, even then, despite their poverty. A poor boy, a magic bean, a giant's treasure. Just a silly English story for kids with a moral, he'd thought then. Now, it felt like a cruel joke. Desperation gnawed at him. He had to do something. Anything. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on the old, dusty radio his grandfather had left him. It was practically an antique, more for decoration than actual use. But then, an idea sparked. He remembered his grandfather mentioning something about a hidden compartment. With trembling fingers, Jack fiddled with the back of the radio. A small panel popped open, revealing a single, large, unusually smooth bean. It shimmered slightly, an iridescent green unlike any bean he'd ever seen. Could it be? He dismissed the thought as foolish. It was just a bean, a random object his grandfather had stashed away. But what if? What if it was the bean? Driven by a sliver of hope, Jack decided to take a chance. He had nothing left to lose. He traded the radio and the bean at the local pawn shop for a small sum of money, enough to pay the rent and get his mother some medicine. He felt a pang of guilt, a foolish hope extinguished, but it was overshadowed by relief. At least they were safe for now. Days turned into weeks. His mother's health improved, and Jack managed to find a part-time job. Life was still hard, but they were managing. The bean, the magic, it had all been a figment of his imagination, a childish fantasy from an English story for learning English. He focused on his work, on taking care of his mother, on simply surviving. He even started listening to English stories for listening practice again, finding a strange comfort in the familiar tales. One evening, while listening to an English story for speaking practice, a news report interrupted the broadcast. The local museum had been robbed. The stolen item? A large, iridescent green bean. Jack froze. The description matched the bean he'd found in the radio. But how? He rushed to the pawn shop, his heart pounding. The pawnbroker remembered.
The diamond-studded tiara vanished. Not merely misplaced, but put into thin air, right in the middle of Lady Beatrice's extravagant 80th birthday bash. Champagne flutes tinkled, laughter echoed through the opulent ballroom, and then silence. Detective Inspector Leo Maxwell, a man whose reputation for solving the unsolvable was only surpassed by his penchant for strong Earl Grey tea, surveyed the scene. Giant floral arrangements, each costing more than Maxwell's annual salary, adorned the room. Guests, a mix of titled nobility and dubious social climbers, whispered nervously. Lady Beatrice, a woman whose wrinkles were as expertly crafted as her diamond collection, looked ready to spontaneously combust. "Find it, Maxwell," she commanded, her voice like gravel gargling with ice. "That tiara is a family heirloom." "It's priceless." Maxwell, ever the pragmatist, wasn't swayed by sentiment. Priceless meant complicated, and complicated meant a long night. He began his investigation, his gaze sweeping over the room. The ballroom, with its high ceilings and ornate decorations, offered countless hiding places. He interviewed the guests, each with their own alibi, each with their own motive. Lord Harrington, deeply in debt, eyed the tiara with undisguised longing earlier in the evening. The flamboyant opera singer, Madame Evangeline, hinted at a long-standing rivalry with Lady Beatrice. Even the seemingly innocuous caterers seemed suspicious. Maxwell found a stray sequin near the grand staircase. A clue? Perhaps. He followed the trail of sequins, discovering they matched those on Madame Evangeline's dress. A likely suspect? Possibly. But Maxwell never jumped to conclusions. He needed proof. He questioned Madame Evangeline, who vehemently denied any involvement. "I wouldn't dream of stealing Lady Beatrice's tiara," she declared, clutching her chest dramatically. "We may have our differences, but I'm not a thief," Maxwell pressed further, pointing out the sequins. Madame Evangeline scoffed. "Darling, every diva uses these sequins." "They are hardly unique," he had to agree. The sequin was a dead end. Frustrated, Maxwell retreated to the library, hoping a quiet moment would spark some inspiration. He noticed a small, almost hidden door behind a bookshelf. Intrigued, he opened it, revealing a narrow, winding staircase. Where did it lead? He followed the stairs upwards, finding himself in a small, dusty attic. Cobwebs clung to everything, and the air was thick with the scent of mothballs. He saw a trunk in the corner. He opened it, and his breath hitched. Inside, nestled amongst old costumes and forgotten trinkets, was the tiara. Relief washed over him. Case closed. He carefully picked up the tiara, admiring its intricate design. But something felt off. He examined it closer. It looked different. Lighter. The diamonds, though sparkling, seemed less brilliant. He rushed back to Lady Beatrice, tiara in hand. "I found it," he announced. Lady Beatrice gasped, her eyes widening. "My tiara." "Thank goodness," She reached for it, but Maxwell held back. "There's something you need to see," he said, handing her a magnifying glass. Lady Beatrice examined the tiara, her expression changing from relief to confusion, then to dawning horror. These aren't real diamonds," she exclaimed. "They are imitations," Maxwell nodded. "The real tiara was never stolen, Lady Beatrice. It was switched," he explained his theory. "Someone had replaced the real tiara with a replica, likely weeks or even months ago. The birthday party wasn't the scene of the crime, it was merely the stage. The real tiara was already gone." He looked at the guests, their faces a mixture of shock and suspicion. Who could have done it? Who knew about the tiara switch? Then, his gaze fell on a young woman standing near the back of the room. She was Lady Beatrice's personal assistant. Emily, a quiet, unassuming girl who had been working for the family for years. She looked pale, her eyes darting nervously. Maxwell approached her. "Emily," he said softly, "I need to ask you some questions." Emily stammered, I didn't do anything," but Maxwell noticed a small detail. A tiny, almost invisible scratch on her wrist, hidden beneath her sleeve. He gently pulled up her sleeve, revealing a faint, almost healed-over wound. "That scratch," Maxwell said, "it looks like it could have been caused by something sharp." "Like a diamond?" Emily's eyes widened in panic. She tried to pull her arm away, but it was too late. "I know you did it, Emily," Maxwell said. "But I need to know why." Emily burst into tears. I didn't mean to. I needed the money. My mother is sick, and I couldn't afford the treatment." Maxwell felt a pang of sympathy. He knew what it was like to be desperate. But that didn't excuse her actions. He turned to Lady Beatrice, who had been watching the scene unfold in stunned silence. "It's up to you, Lady Beatrice," he said. "Do you want to press charges?" Lady Beatrice looked at Emily, her face a mixture of anger and pity. After a long pause, she sighed. "No," she said finally. "I won't press charges. But you have to return the tiara, Emily. And you have to get your mother the treatment she needs." I'll help you with that," Emily sobbed, thanking Lady Beatrice profusely. Maxwell watched as the police escorted Emily away, a complex mix of emotions swirling within him. He had solved the case, but the ending was far from what he expected. The real twist wasn't the identity of the thief, but the unexpected act of compassion from the victim. The diamond-studded tiara, it turned out, wasn't the only thing with hidden facets.